As sociology covers almost every aspect of social life, one of the most difficult questions you can ask any sociologist is, what exactly is sociology? Nonetheless, we're going to give it a go here. The simplest definition of sociology is it's the study of societies, but that leaves a lot of questions unanswered. What are societies, and what are sociologists looking at? So we have to be a bit clearer, and the distinction that can help us here is between social and sociological problems.
A social problem is anything people in a society feel is wrong. Things such as vandalism, crime, poverty, the activities of bankers and so on. Sociologists do study these things, but their interest is much wider and includes the ordinary and the everyday. Things most people just take for granted. But for sociologists, the routine, the everyday, is where it all begins. This was well explained by the famous American sociologist Peter Berger, who wrote, "The sociological problem is not so much why things go wrong from the point of view of the authorities, but how things work in the first place." So sociologists are interested in what's been called the problem of social order. That is how societies and parts of societies work in the way they do.
So if you just stop and take a look, you'll see evidence of the order, the predictability, the regularity of life that's all around you.
By and large, we see people behaving in predictable ways and doing what they're supposed to be doing most of the time. And if you dig a little deeper, you'll find more evidence of the regularity and order of social life. In any society, roughly the same number of people are born each year, get married, get divorced, commit crimes, get sick, and die. So when sociologists look at societies or parts of a society, such as families, or work, or religion, they're looking first of all at how they work, documenting their regularity and order.
But a problem for the sociologist is that while societies are ordered, this order is constantly changing and evolving. So the society you're growing up in is very different from when your parents were young, and very, very different from how it was for your grandparents. So sociologists are interested in how societies work and change, and a criticism that's often made about sociology is that it's just about societies and not about individual people. But that's just not true.
What sociologists are interested in is the relationship between the individual and society. And that's another sociological problem. And sociologists have developed some key concepts to help us understand how this happens. And one of them is culture. What we mean by culture is the rules and values of a society or social group.
So if, say, I invited you out for dinner and I suggested, let's have dog and chips, you'd probably be horrified, because our culture tells us we just don't eat dogs.
But in some cultures it's quite acceptable to eat dogs, and so no one would be the least surprised or offended if they were served dog to eat. What would surprise them, however, is seeing dogs being kept as pets and living in people's houses as guests. To people from some cultures this would seem very strange.
So culture is rather like the rules of a game that we're all expected to play by, telling us what's right, what's wrong, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And a key concept that sociologists use to help explain how this happens is called socialization.
Socialization refers to the processes by which individuals learn about the cultural values and norms of their societies and social groups. It begins from the time we're born and continues throughout our lives. The family, education, and religion are examples of important socializing agencies that transmit values and norms and ways of thinking and behaving. And it's through socialization that we develop a sense of who we are and how the world works and our place in it. So it's not that sociologists aren't interested in individuals, but their focus is on the relationship between individuals and societies. How, as we're creating societies by what we do, societies are also creating us.
Sociologists, by and large, don't have a problem with biological and psychological explanations, but they do argue that you can never fully understand people's behaviour in isolation from the social context in which they live. And by understanding these contexts, we can better understand ourselves. And that's the promise of sociology.
The idea of social construction is one of the most important concepts in sociology, and that makes it another one of those transferable skills, something you can bring into all sorts of different exam questions. So, what do sociologists mean by social construction?
The key idea of social construction is that what we observe all around us and take for granted as real, as normal, as natural, as right or wrong is not just a consequence of what we're seeing, but rather what culture has taught us to see.
Now this sounds very philosophical and abstract, but we're going to try and make it clearer here with the aid of these glasses. Just imagine you're looking at something with the naked eye, but if you put on a pair of glasses, you see it very differently. If you put on sunglasses, it changes again. And if you look through a telescope, it's very different. This is really what culture does. It acts as a kind of lens through which we see the world, and these lenses vary between different cultures and they change over time.
Now, one of the best ways to understand a concept like social construction and show the examiners you understand it is to give an example. So that's what we'll do here.
In all societies there are noticeable differences between the typical behaviour of males and females.
Being different from girls, girls tend to talk to each other a lot more and get a lot closer. Boys tend to like the space.
Girls maybe kind of are on both extreme ends of the spectrum sometimes, so they're kind of really happy with each other or really upset. And I think boys are just kind of a bit more mellow and don't gossip as much.
I think the main difference is guys tend to be a lot more carefree, whereas girls tend to overthink things, I think, a little bit more.
I think girls will talk about their feelings more because it's a way of bonding with their peers, whereas if men started talking to each other about their feelings, I think they'd probably get judged because they need to look macho in front of their friends.
If I want to talk about something more emotional, I'd talk to a girl rather than a boy.
One view is that these differences are biological or natural. If we look at education, for example, the parts of the brain responsible for language and fine motor skills develop much more quickly in girls, while the parts of the brain responsible for maths and geometry develop more quickly in boys. And hormonal differences have been used to explain why females tend to be more emotional than males. Most sociologists today don't dispute the significance of biology in shaping gender differences, but they do argue that it doesn't tell us the full story.
What we're going to do is a little activity here that's going to help you understand a key concept which comes into everything you do in sociology, which is identity. It's what we call a transferable skill, because once you understand this concept, you can bring it into almost any question the examiners choose to set. So to help understand the idea of identity, I'm going to give you a little activity. I'm going to ask you to write down in 10 words, to describe yourself in 10 words. So you write down I am, and then you write 10 words that summarise you. So you might write, for example, about your appearance, about your beliefs, about where you come from, your family. But you might also say things about yourself. I'm outgoing, I'm shy, I'm hardworking, I'm lazy. So 10 things that describe you. Okay, let's give it a go. And if you're watching this on film, we'd like you to do the same thing, please. Just describe yourself in 10 words, and this will help you understand the concept of identity. Okay, so Laura, can you tell us what you wrote?
I've put I'm happy, outgoing, friendly,
hardworking, student, indecisive and impatient.
I wrote that I'm a girl, tall, hardworking.
English, musical and hardworking.
I'm outgoing, lively, relaxed.
I am a Christian, short, 17, a sister.
Easily distracted and disorganised.
To help understand identity and its relationship to society, we'll use a list made by one of my students, Julie. Now if we look at the top of Julie's list, she's put that she's female, British, student, Chelsea supporter, daughter and young. Things she shares with millions of other people. So one of the ways in which we identify ourselves in relation to others is what we have in common with them, such as shared biological characteristics, where we come from, what we do, what we like or support, and our relationships to others. And these things make up what's called our social identity. And social identities can give us a sense of self-esteem and purpose, and provide a basis for interacting and socialising with others.
However, our identities don't just come from categories and groups, because as well as being members of social groups, we're also individuals with our own distinctive characteristics. A third way that sociology is different from common sense is that while common sense sees the causes of crime lying within individuals, the sociological imagination involves making links between our actions as individuals and the society we're living in. For example, we now live in a consumer society where we judge our success in terms of the material possessions we have. But many people, particularly those born into the poorer parts of society, are never going to be able to earn the money to buy these things, so they're more likely to turn to crime. The cause of rising crime, then, lies in societies and the widening gap between the rich and everyone else. And modern societies that have the biggest inequalities of income distribution, like the United States, tend to have the highest rates of crime. And so to explain things like this, we need to move beyond individuals. So here we've looked at just a few of the ways in which a sociological approach to crime is different from common sense. And what we've seen in relation to crime can also apply to other areas of sociology that you'll be studying. In short, doing sociology just means looking at things in a different way. So next time somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh, you're taking sociology, that's just common sense, isn't it?" You can say, well, not exactly. There's sociological questions, there's the objectivity of doing systematic research, and there's the sociological imagination, and that should shut them up. But more important, these ideas should help you to understand sociology and hopefully make it more fun.